Well, it's my 1979 Trail 90. Drove roughly about 600 kilometers round trip to pick her up from where I live. And I'm starting to kind of tear her down to see what kind of shape she's in. Found a few issues with her. I've already taken the signal lights and tail light off and cleaned those all up and cleaned up the electrical connections. Someone dumped some gray fence paint all over the back end, so got some of that cleaned up. I'm basically going to be working my way from the back of the bike up to the front. Just taking her apart, got the chain off right now. Got that all cleaned up. She was fairly rusty and caked on with some mud. Was insured back in 2007, so I'm not sure how much upkeep or running time it's seen since then. She's got just over 6,000 kilometers on her. It seems like the original owner actually kept her in pretty good shape. It seems to be all complete. It's got all the little extras like the fuel can. The battery box is up top right now. Got that off doing some testing electrical. Missing the clutch adjustment cover, but that's pretty common. Brake lights work. Gonna have to replace these pegs because the rubber's rotting out on the bottom, but all the rest of the rubber is actually in really good shape besides that. Plug's a little sooted up, but I think it'll work for now. Gonna have to take the wheels off and check the brakes and the bearings. I'd like to replace this with the actual rubber flap, or make my own flap at some point. The seat itself, I don't know if it's new and you just didn't put it on correctly. It's got a little bit of ripping in here. I'm guessing that's what the tape is for. But underneath, the foam rubber underneath is like brand new. So I don't know if he's replaced this seat. It looks like an original one to me because it actually has the little piping design, which you don't normally get on the aftermarket refabs. He's made himself a little buddy seat, which is rather cool. The exhaust itself is in really good shape all the way from the header up. It's really solid. The only problem is he ran into something or backed in, or I'm not sure what happened, but he tore a chunk out of the back part of the muffler here. The metal is pretty decent. It's not too rusted out, so I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to patch that or not, but it doesn't seem to really affect it a whole lot, so I'll find a way to patch that up instead of getting a whole new muffler, reducer, and all that in good shape. Doesn't seem to be any big dings. The paint's all in really good shape. It's got the original coilover shocks and buddy pegs. Lots of life left in the brake pads according to the adjustment bits, but we'll have to take those apart and see what kind of shape they're in. The swing arm's getting a little bit close to the tire there, but it seems to clear it fine, so we'll see how that goes. I'm gonna have to take this all out and check all the pivot points, make sure they're all greased up. Everything I've checked so far seems to be pretty dry. The next job I'm going to be doing is taking this apart and redoing all the electrical connections. There seems to be a bit of resistance on the electrical to ground, so got to find out where those gremlins are hiding. It's empty right now, but it all seems to be there. Key works. It's not the original to the ignition, but at least it's got an original key. Airbox is all good. There's no cracks in it that I was able to see. I'm going to have to take that apart and clean it, though there's a little bit of dirt in the inside. And the filter looks like it's in good shape. Rubbers are all still extremely pliable, which is awesome for the age of this. There is one bolt missing here, which looks like he's replaced it with a smaller, like 10 mil back in there. I think there's supposed to be some sort of carry through bolt from here to there at some point. I'll have to look that up and see. The condenser tube here that they put on the newer ones for emissions control is missing a little plug on the bottom. I'm not sure if that actually affects anything to do with pressure in the airbox, but I'll have to look that up. There isn't too much information online on these bits because they only put them on, I think, the last 2 years of the CTs. Dual range sub-transmission shifts. It works fine. Kickstarter, he's welded on a nut here, which I think there's actually supposed to be a rubber stopper. It connects up and hits the point right here so that it doesn't get too close to the back rear stand, and he's put this bit of Teflon here which the chain is rubbing on. I think that's just to stop it from bouncing up and hitting the chain, but he's welded this bracket on. Never actually seen a CT with a setup like that, so you have to see if I like it or not. I might actually be cutting that off, but I'm sure he had it on there for a reason. The sprockets are in actually really good shape. I'm not sure if he's replaced them or not. He has had this side cover off. You can tell by the monkeying on the bit ends. But the other side cover seems good. There doesn't seem to be any marks at all, so I don't think they've taken off the clutch side cover on the other side. There's a little bit of leak in here, but I think that's actually coming from my choke valve there, because it seems to leak through the choke a bit. I'm not sure if there's some type of seal behind that. We'll have to look into that. Probably going to take the carburetor off and clean her all up. Doesn't seem to be in that bad a shape. Seems to idle through all the different throttle positions really good. Took the points cover off and looked at the points, and it was dry in there. The little felt was just bone dry and everything, so I put a little tiny dab of extra high temp grease on that just to give it a little bit of friction reduction. Everything on the front hub looks good. Got to go over the brakes. This one shock here seems to have a small leak. I'm not sure if there's... Oh, there you go. On the bottom though, but it's not leaking out of the... It's not leaking out of the regular drain nut, so I'm not quite sure where it's coming from. Just a very small leak though. I'm not sure if there's another bolt up inside there. I'll have to take a look when I get the wheel off. I didn't see anything in the manuals on that. But it doesn't seem to be leaking out of the actual shock seals, so that's all good. I'm sure I can find a way to stop that up. Cables are all in great shape. They're still very flexible. I think he's actually probably replaced these at one point, or they're just really in good shape for the age. I do need to do a little bit of work with this guy. Some of the bolts under here are horribly stripped out, and this thing's gonna come off and just get all cleaned up. The switches all work, but you can definitely tell there's some resistance there when you're switching from one to another with the electrical on. So that'll all come out to be cleaned up. I was happy to have an original mirror until I took a closer look and realized it was a Suzuki mirror. So now I'm gonna have to find some replacement mirrors for this once I get everything else dealt with. Headlight bucket seems really good. Seals are still pliable and intact. Doesn't seem to be that dirty on the inside there. I'm gonna have to take this out, check all the electrical connections on the inside. Everything seems to be doable though. Unfortunately the low beam is burnt out on the headlight, or appears to be anyway. I'll check the connections, make sure it's not a connection problem, which isn't uncommon for the CTs. But the high beam works fine, so that'll be perfectly good for running around for now. So the next job is going to be the rear light. Take that all off, check all the grounding connections, clean everything up that way. Basically just working my way from the back of the bike to the front. Starting with the wheel, checking the bearings and the hubs and the brakes and all that good stuff. And working my way to the front. It is almost the end of November, and I'm in interior of Canada, British Columbia, and it is gorgeous outside. This is crazy. I don't remember a year this warm, so it gives me a lot more time to monkey with my CT. Okay guys, thanks kindly. Have a good one. We'll catch up on the next parts.